I'm Ed Gordon. Tonight, a BET News exclusive. Black America Votes, the Biden interview. Amid growing political divisions and a failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and with questions continuing to swirl around the strength of his candidacy, I sat down with President Joe Biden to specifically discuss the issues and concerns of Black voters. I'd like you to take a moment and tell Black America, why should they turn out for you? Our interview took place Tuesday in Las Vegas, where the president was in town to address the NAACP convention. None of our questions were shared in advance. Mr. President, good to sit with you.
Good to be back with you guys.
Let me start with your opponent, Donald Trump. He is, understatement here, an incendiary figure. Some are wondering if the assassination attempt will change him at all, make him more politically disciplined, more unifying. He says he's going to be, but many believe he won't, and you're going to have to fight fire with fire. How will you take him on from this point?
Like I've been taking him on, based on the issues. I mean, look, everybody said, I said we got to tone down the rhetoric about violence. There's no room for violence. You can't be talking about violence. You can't be saying that if I lose the election, there'll be a bloodbath, which he says. If the January 6th folks were good folks and they should be released from prison, et cetera. But there are serious, serious differences we have on the issues of the future of the country. And I'm going to take them on directly.
What's his selection of J.D. Vance say to you?
Who says to me that he's decided that MAGA Republican politics is going to be the future of the Republican Party. And because J.D. is a great guy, but a hardworking senator, but a really, really, really conservative MAGA Republican.
You said to me before we started, everything's at stake here. Explain to people why this election is different.
Well, look, one of the things that occurred when I won, you may remember, I said I was running for 3 reasons. It was after my son was killed or died because of Iraq. And I didn't want to get involved. And then I was watching television. And I was a professor at Penn and I was watching television later. And you saw those folks come out of the fields in Charlottesville carrying torches, accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan, carrying Nazi swastikas. And a young woman a bystander was killed. And he was asked, well, tell me about what happened in Mr. President. There were good people on both sides. That's when I decided I had to run. That's why I ran. And I said when I ran, I was going to try to do three things. And I meant this sincerely. Restore the soul of America, the decency and honor which we usually debate. Secondly, build the middle class, build out the middle class, and when that works, the bottom does well, and the wealthy still do fine. And third, try to unite the country. And I was told I couldn't get any of that done. And then I had 4 major initiatives that they said could never pass. They all passed. And so we're making progress. We have the most advanced economy in the world today. We got more to do. But and all of it, he says, all of it should be, if he's elected, he's going to get rid of. And we haven't talked about foreign policy, and I know that's not on top of most people's minds, but he wants to get out of NATO. He wants to yield to Putin. He has a very different view of the world than I do.
We're going to get to the economy in just a moment, but you've made it clear by now, certainly you've been asked 1,000 times, that you have no intention of getting out of this race. Yet there are those who are concerned still about your age and capability because of your age. Is there anything that you would look to, you personally, not anybody else, not other pundits, not even perhaps family members, that you would look to say, if I see that, I will reevaluate?
If I had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this to pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact that we told we couldn't get it done. But there's more to do, and I'm reluctant to walk away from that.
Would you be willing to be transitional even at this point? Would you be willing to even look at the idea that if you get in, perhaps in a year and a half or two, you would look to your, in your words, very capable vice president to carry it over the finish line?
Well, look, only if I was told that there was some medical condition that I had. And that's not the case. So, but I understand what people say. Look, I'm only 3 years older than Trump, okay? And I think I'm a little better physical shape than he is. The point is, though, that it's not unreasonable for people to say, wait a minute, you're 81 years old. And so I think it's a legitimate thing from the race. And as long as I can demonstrate that it's not affecting my ability to compete, my ability to get things done, my ability to literally lead the world. Lead the world.
So you are willing from year to year to look at your health, your capabilities, and move from that place?
Well, as a practical matter, yes, but there's no reason to believe that's not going to happen.
Let's turn to the economy. You've done some very good things. Unemployment rate for Black America, the lowest in history. Black Americans starting small businesses in record numbers. With your administration, you provided $7.3 billion to HBCUs, capped insulin, as you've told us, for seniors and others. But because of the wealth disparity for African Americans, there's this sense, and being Joe from Scranton, you understand this more than most. Sometimes it's very difficult, even with all of those programs, to make it day to day to day. What do you tell people who are paying $6 for cereal? They can't take their kids to a movie or a ball game, memories that last with you. What do you tell them?
Well, I tell them what's happening is inflation is coming down. It is coming down. You have 16 Nobel laureates in economics saying that it's coming down. I think you're going to see, I have not spoken to the Fed. My guess is they're going to reduce rates. But what we have to do is deal with the corporate greed. What's happened here is since the pandemic, corporate profits have doubled. For example, I want to make sure that you cannot, corporations that own apartment complexes cannot raise rent beyond 5% in any 1 year, period. I want to see to it that we're going to build 20 million new homes that are affordable. That's why I've been moving to make sure that we provide first-time home buyers, particularly in African-American communities and minority communities, down payments of $10,000 to get started. That's why I've forgiven student debt. People who have met the requirement of paying off for 10 years and still have extreme debt, but when they're involved in an enterprise that is whether a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, et cetera, that debt is forgiven. And it's changing people's lives. It's changing people's lives.
Why do you think it hasn't resonated in a louder ring of the bell?
Well, I think it's resonated for those who have been affected. There's about 4 million people so far. And because the Republican Party and the MAGA Republicans have been opposed to it, and they've been beating up on it. I think that there's a lot of what we've done, Ed. For example, the infrastructure bill, fancy word for making sure we have better roads, highways, bridges, take all the lead pipes out of our homes, make sure there's access to affordable internet, just like in Roosevelt's time, back in earlier than that, making sure there was electricity and agriculture in the rural areas. That's all. It takes time for it to happen. And so it's just taking time for people to see it. And the other thing is, there's not been a very good job done about saying this new $1 billion bridge going over is brought to you by Joe Biden. This $1 billion tunnel is going to increase and reduce blah, blah, blah. So we're working on that. And I think, but I think it's just time.
Do you think Democrats have played the long game well? People will say Republicans play the long game better.
Well, let me put it this way. They may play the long game, but they don't do much. Look what they've done. Last administration had us in a recession when they left. Last administration, Black unemployment was down. Last administration, because of the failure to deal with COVID in an honest way, a million people died. Last administration, we had the largest deficit of anyone in history, any one-term president. There's only 2 presidents in American history who've come to office and left with fewer jobs than they came to office. And the other was a guy we all know very well. I call, anyway, Trump is one of them.
When we come back, Republicans in the Supreme Court, as you note, trying to ban affirmative action, the teaching of Black history, dismantling of DE&I. How do you stand in the breach?
Catch that one. Deep center field to the bullpen. Goodbye.
Let me ask you about reproductive rights. You've had your vice president out front on that, talking about the long game. People will say that there's an example of Democrats not playing the long game well, that conservatives have been saying they're going to get rid of this for years now, and they got it. You've said that you will restore it. How can you be assured that you'll be able to do that?
The Supreme Court did it. Trump appointed the Supreme Court with the express purpose of doing it. So that's the way it
They're
works.
still going to have the majority, no matter if you win or lose.
Well, there's going to probably be 2 more appointments to the court. There's probably 2 people going to retire. Just imagine if he has 2 more appointments on that, what that means forever. Now, look, one of the things that's happening is in the majority of the states, even conservative states, where it's been left to the public to determine whether or not they want to have no exceptions, they want to have a hard call like Mance wants on no abortion under circumstance, that you have states saying, no, that's not what we want to do. We want exceptions. So I think there is the way we're going to change it, if we get a Democratic Congress, all we got to do is get 51 of those members of the House and Senate, of the Senate, and say, this is it. And then I'll sign that bill. But what's going to happen? Trump's going to sign a bill if he gets elected. We don't do well. It's going to say, we wipe it all, no exceptions, nothing, done. And so it's a little bit like George Floyd, what happened. I had to take independent action. It wasn't as strong as what I wanted the George Floyd legislation to be. And I couldn't get Republican votes. So we got to point out what's at stake and what the MAGA Republicans are trying to do.
So let's walk into that. You led me into the next question, and that is post George Floyd, African Americans were really hopeful in terms of progress with police reform, racial injustice, equality. There was a hope for government sanctions, reparations, and now Republicans in the Supreme Court, as you note, have banned or are trying to ban affirmative action, the teaching of Black history, dismantling of DE&I projects, and they're promising to roll back even more with something you and I talked about before we started here, and that's Project 2025. How do you stand in the breach?
I stand in the breach for making it clear we're not going to let that happen. For example, if you look at what happened with George Floyd, we didn't get the legislation, so I took executive action, made sure these guys got to wear cameras, and everybody has a copy, everything's on. It's changed. It's changed the way things have. Not what we should have, as far as it should change, but it's changed things. We're also in a situation where, if you take a look at what we've done in terms of the number of police officers most cops are killed, responding to domestic violence of that. So we don't need more cops. What we need is more social workers. We need more people who are in communities building coalitions. That's growing across the country. That's growing in neighborhoods. That's growing. And we have to keep doing it. We need another 100,000 community police officers working with communities and bringing people in who are social workers, people who know how to put neighbors together. Or we're doing things like what we're changing in the environmental stuff. So many Black neighborhoods are ripped apart by interstate highways running through the middle of their community, splitting them up. But we're providing the money to be able to pave over that now, not pave over it, but build turn them into tunnels to bring the neighbors together again. But the other thing we've done is making clear that when I got elected, I said I was going to have an administration that looked like America. I had more African Americans in high positions in not just the vice president, not just Supreme Court justice, but across the board in any administration in history. Because it's important that that kid in 10th grade looks up and says, I can do that. I can do that. It's important that people know that they're respected know that they're taken care of, know that they're engaged. That's why I appointed Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's, by the way, the brightest of the court, I think. I mean, in terms of pure gray matter. But so we're going to change this, but it's going to take time. We got to stay at it.
What do you tell a African American who says, I hear that, but I've heard it for too long. It's going to take time. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
Look, take a look at what your bottom line is in your economy now. Take a look how the unemployment's the lowest it's been there. Take a look at how many the new jobs are created. Take a look at how many people are been able to get to college education and get the debt wiped out. Take a look at what's actually happening on the ground. Take a look at the fight that's going on. I mean, for example, I got a lot of heat because you have our friends in the Republican Party trying to erase Black history. Well, guess what? I've set up a new Juneteenth, a new federal holiday. They can't erase it anymore. Everybody now knows what happened then.
But they're trying to erase it in the schools.
So they are. And that's why we got to make sure that he doesn't get elected. Trump's Project 2025 says do it at the Department of Education. Let it up to local schools. What's he talking about? What's he talking about? He's talking about trying to erase it. Not just affirmative action, but all efforts to right the ships for people. Give people a chance. Look, my dad used to say that a job's about a lot more than your paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about your integrity. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay, and mean there was a shot of it. We're moving there. And by the way, the way you get equity, you build equity by home ownership. That's how all middle-class white guys did it. That's how my dad was able to do it. You buy a home, you build an equity in the home, you're able to move from there. That's happening. That's happening. But we're going to focus on housing, significantly focus on affordable housing.
But you do appreciate that the standard for your dad and for any white man in this country is vastly different than any African American.
No, I do. But what you appreciate, my dad was a working class guy. We lived in a 3-bedroom home, 4 kids, and a grandpa lived with us. We weren't poor, but there wasn't any money left at the end of the day. And so it's all about treating people with dignity. And it's about making sure that, look, I mean, for example, look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense, a Black man. I named Ketanji Brown. I mean, because of the people I've named. It's about making it clear that American history is Black history. Black history is American history, and it's being built by it. That's why we're strong.
When we come back,
I'd like you to take a moment and tell Black America, why should they turn out for you?
Thinking to start cutting carbs. I need to drop my belly fat.
If you want to drop
I want to ask you about your relationship with the Black voter. I think it's fair to say, in order for you to go over the top in November, you are going to have a large Black voter turnout to put you over the line to victory. And honestly, if I'm honest with you, the enthusiasm this time around is not the same as the last time you won. There is a certain disenchantment. Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta are going to be deciding factors in that 270 you've got to get to. I'd like you to take a moment and tell Black America what you want them to know. Why should they turn out for you?
Because they know where my heart is. They know where my head is. And by the way, if you notice, whether it's young Blacks or young whites or young Hispanics or young Asian Americans, they've never focused until after Labor Day. I mean, the idea they're focused intently on an election right now is not there. And by the way, if you take a look at the presidents who have won at this stage of the game, the last 7 or 8 presidents, 5 of them were losing at this time by significant margins. The point is, we're just getting down to game time now. We've put together the largest volunteer organization, I think, in America. There were 2,200,000 individual contributors, small contributors, raising tens of millions of dollars for me to be able to compete. So I think you're going to be surprised that. And by the way, for example, I was in South Carolina, went to going to a Black home where a dad and a son We're sitting at the kitchen table with him and they talk about it. And after it was all over, his father said, no one's talked to my son like this before. No one said, you really mean it. I do mean it. I mean it. It's about why I got involved in the first place. Look, I got out of school, high school, and my state was segregated by law to its great shame in Delaware. And I got involved in the civil rights movement. No great shakes, just sit-ins, and things like that. And the end result of this was all the friends I made. For example, one of the guys who my mom talks about when Barack called me and saying he wanted to do a background check on me because he wanted to think of me as vice president. I said, I don't want to be vice president. And he said, no, there's only you and two others. I said, Barack, I can help you more as a senator. I really believe that. He said, no. He said, well, damn it, there's only you. And I said, Barack, I don't want to be vice president. He said, well, go home and talk about it. He knows my mom, my dad's dead. So we had a meeting. I was on the train and then going back to Wilmington. And when I got home, we sat in the back porch, called the family together. My son was alive then, my two sons, my daughter. The only outside other than the family member that was there was Ted Kaufman. It was my best friend and was just sitting stepped into the senator when I got elected vice president. And so we went around the room. On the porch, what do you want to do? And my wife said, you ought to do it because if you don't, he's going to ask you to be Secretary of State and you'll be away all the time. And then my son, Bo, who was Attorney General, should be sitting there, not me. And I said, Dad, you have an obligation, went through it. And so everybody made their case, and I still didn't want to do it. My mom was sitting against a railing and over on the porch, there's like a story up from the foot ground. And I said, honey, you haven't said anything. She said, Joey. She said, remember when you were a kid? Remember when I called you when you got out of the race with Barack and you asked about him? He said, he's really bright. He's an honorable man. He'll make a good president. And I said, yeah, Mom, I remember that. I said, remember when you were a kid and they were desegregating Mayfield, the neighborhood we live, the neighboring neighborhood called Linfield? You were 14 or 15 years old. I told you not to go down there because there were people protesting, but you went down and you got arrested for being on the porch with a black family. And they brought you back home. I said, yeah, I remember that, Mom. She said, remember you had that job as a lifeguard in a country club setting? You wanted to be the only white guy to work in the east side in the projects as a lifeguard? I said, yeah, Mom. So let me get this straight, honey. The first black man in history has a chance to be president. You told him no.
K-12 makes going back to school easy. Forget the stress and shopping. We send you everything you need to.
That's how it's always been with me in the black community. It's the same community. By the way, one of the guys that when I was a lifeguard back then is, and I helped represent as a young public defender, is out here now. He's a major labor leader. They're my friends. They're still my friends. And they're still the ones that encourage me to move. So I think that, and one thing does change, it's not an excuse, an explanation. I would ordinarily be going through black neighborhoods on the foot, working through the neighborhoods. I have a tradition. I close every campaign, no matter what campaign, going into the projects and going down the east side. And, hey, Joe, how you doing? Everybody, well, just because they're my friends, let them know I'm still there. We can't do that now. Not because of the black community, because it's too dangerous for me to be out walking on a company. So what I'm doing now is trying to keep in touch with as many of my black constituents and letting people know that I'm available. I'm available. It's a reason why I got involved in politics in the first place. Not a joke. Not a joke. Everybody deserves a shot. Everybody deserves a shot. And we've demonstrated, you give them a shot, they step up. They step up in every community. That's why the black community is doing as well as it is now. And it's going to do better. We got to focus on making sure that this MAGA 25 deal that Trump has out there does not succeed. They want to wipe it all out. Look what's happened. All the folks in the black community have prescription drug problems. They're a lot of money. You have diabetes. You have You need insulin, $400. It's now $35. The black community, in the east side where I'm from, you're in a situation where no black American, any American over the age of 65 will have to pay more than $2,000 a year for all the prescriptions for the entire year, including cancer drugs that are $12,000-$15,000. And so it's about even healthcare. It's about making sure there's opportunity for people to have a good education. I've been pushing and we're going to get it done. Early education. You know all the studies that are not as well as I do, that you come out of a neighborhood or a house where there's no books, where there's a dysfunctional family, where there's a problem, and you start off school, you hear 1 million fewer words having been spoken because there's not conversation. Well, guess what the studies show now? If you have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds going to early education, not daycare, education, you increase by 56% their ability to go through 12 years of school and on to community college. And I'm going to make community college free. There's so many opportunities we have. And I think the community is beginning to see it. At least I hope so.
Mr. President, always good to speak with you.
Hope you have me back. I really mean it.
That'll be up to your folks.
It's up to me.
There you
if
go.
You call them.
All
They
right.
say no, call
I'll
me.
take you up on it. Good to see you.
Thanks, pal.